Why were you ashamed of yourself like never before? When I was a little kid, probably first grade or so, I remember being super mad at my mom for something that day. I was using a coffee can to trace for circles. I would then use the circles to make faces. Then I would color in the faces. I did them for my dad and my siblings and my teacher. Then I did one for my mum. And when I was showing her, I took a red crayon and drew a big X across her face on the page. I was angry. I don't even remember why, but I will never forget the look on her face. It was like I destroyed her soul. She was just so defeated and sad. Not like a play sad, like real sadness. Looking back at it with adult eyes, I am sure she was frustrated being a mum of multiple kids on a one-income household. And there is no telling what was going on in her marriage at the time, plus that was about the time she lost her father. So I know it was a difficult time in her life, and that she didn't need that kind of bullshit from me. So when I drew that X, I think I actually hurt her in some way. That was almost 40 years ago, and it still makes me ashamed to think about it. It's funny how certain memories from your early childhood are burned into your brain and rest just disappear. My mom had little pictures of me in a jewelry box on her nightstand. We weren't a warm picture having family, and I shouldn't have even known they were there because I invaded her privacy. I got mad one day and ripped them in half at 10 or 11 years old and found her crying over the pictures 2 weeks later. She died last month and I'll never forgive myself. She cried because she cares. Sorry for your loss. Yep, I've unintentionally hurt my mum's feelings as a kid with no filter. Except I was like 10 or 11. It was right after my parents divorced and my mom and siblings and I moved. Mum made enchiladas for dinner one night, and they were quite good if I remember correctly, but there was something missing. So later on she asked how I liked them, and without thinking, I blurted out, "Dad's enchiladas are better," and ran back upstairs to my room to play video games. Come back downstairs a little later, and Mom's crying on the couch. It was at that moment I knew I fucked up. This one's just brutal. I remember a time my child said something very intentionally hurtful to me, and it stung like hell on a personal level. He was old enough to visibly regret it almost immediately when he saw how much it hurt me, and he saw how much it hurt me, and his friends couldn't believe what he said to his mom. On a mom level, I do think about it from time to time. Mostly I think about how I saw him learn a lesson about cruelty with me, someone who will forgive him unconditionally, and hopefully it will prevent him from making that mistake with someone he loves who might walk away if he acts so cruelly. It hurt, but don't forget moms know your heart. They know you are humans, in process. I was never the most patient person, and I despise being late for things. My wife, kids, and I were going to walk down and hang out at a neighbor's house for the evening. They were taking forever, and my wife kept stalling, and we were going to be late. I yelled at all of them to hurry up and proceeded to be pissed off the whole walk down. When we walked in, it was a surprise party for me. She was delaying because they hadn't finished the decorations yet. Felt like a complete piece of shit. This was 10 years ago, and it still bothers me. Definitely taught me to be a more patient person, though. Friends threw a surprise birthday party for me, and to ensure I didn't walk in too early. They got the kids from upstairs a bucket of filled water balloons and had them chase me around while they got set up. I was mowing the lawn the other day and I felt something hit me in the back. Kind of a soft plop. Here, it was the neighbor's kids throwing water balloons. The next time I came by, I was ready. They chucked a volley, and I caught a few and nailed their little asses. Lit them up. Turned into an all-out war with them, dragging up 2 full wagons of balloons and me wielding a hose. Not really on topic, but your comment sparked my memory. It was hotter than the devil too. Good time. After my father passed, it hit me how little time I had spent with him. I'll never get that time back, and if I allow myself to think about it too much, it rips me to shreds. I loved him so much, but I was fresh out of the house and living with my boyfriend and trying to be an adult. My father was battling cancer, and I could have gone to visit him so many times, but I didn't. If I could go back in time and scream in my own face to sit with him every day, I'd do it in a heartbeat. He deserved so much better. The 25th of June was the 7th anniversary of his death. This time of year always hurts extra. Always make time for the people you love. You're not guaranteed tomorrow, and regret is a potent poison. When I was 12 or 13, I used to steal money from my grandma. I used to take advantage of the fact she was old and not very mobile, and take money from her purse or from an envelope she kept in her wardrobe. Not huge amounts of money, perhaps 750 in total spread across a couple of years. She was the loveliest, kindest person I've ever met, and I never heard her say a bad word about anyone or complain when she was in poor health. The worst part is, I think that perhaps she knew but wouldn't have said anything, as she wouldn't have wanted to get me in trouble. She passed over 20 years ago. I was with her when she went. I'm 47 now, but still think about it often, and I'm so ashamed of it. When I was a kid, I stole a sieve note from my mom's purse, thinking she wouldn't notice it. A few hours later, she asked me if I'd taken a sieve note from her purse, and I said no, and she looked really worried about it. We struggled for money a lot when I was a kid, so that five was probably a big deal for her to lose. I felt really guilty about it for ages, and a couple of months later, I put five back in her purse 2 or 3 times to make up for it. When I was 19, I fell for one of those fake check scams. My mom had to help me pay the bank $2,500. I've since paid her back, but I was so ashamed of myself. I had never broken down and sobbed so hard in front of someone. I was about the same age when I decided to fuck with one of those fake check scammers. I did decide to deposit the check, which I knew would bounce. I made sure to not spend any of the money that was falsely in my account, and thought it'd be interesting to see exactly how the process worked. Then Chase cancelled my account for depositing a fake check and sent me a check for my legitimate balance. Wasn't expecting that shit. Somehow, I still got screwed over by the scammer, even though I was trying to fuck with the scammer. See, otherwise, you could probably have told them that it was fraud, and they would have reversed that decision. But then, because you had deposited it on purpose and knew that the check was fake, you technically broke trust. How does that work? The bank scammed you? As an example, say you're looking for a job. A scammer finds you first and hires you. They give you a check to cover the costs of materials, a new laptop, work boots, whatever sounds reasonable. The check they give you is way too much, say $3 for what will end up being a $500 purchase. They ask you to pay them the remainder after you buy your materials. You oblige. A few days later, the original check bounces, but now you're down whatever you paid back the scammers. A family member of mine went through this last year. It's so messed up to prey on people just looking for a job. She ended up losing $2,500. A few years back, went to visit my sister. At the time I reached at her home, I had to pee really bad. I was so full, I was walking funny. My sister, her husband, and his mother came to greet me at the door. I said I need to use the toilet immediately, and we all entered the house. Just then, my little niece rushed from inside and hugged me. Her head hit my lower abdomen really hard, and I peed right there. I did stop as quickly as possible, but I had a big wet patch on my pant. At least, it was just on the one pant. Could you imagine if it was both pant? My grandmother was my favorite person in the world. Since I was a baby, she sent one real pearl at Christmas. When I was in my early 20s, she made them into a real pearl necklace. She passed away not too long after that. A few years later, I went to a school competition and lost. That necklace. I still feel physically ill when I think about it. Ita, y'all, thank you. So many supportive comments. To those of you who have had the same experience, big hugs to you. I can only imagine how much that hurts. I'm so sorry. Spend some time thinking about how she would react if you were able to tell her. Maybe walk through the conversation in your mind. I doubt she would be angry. She wouldn't love you any less. Your relationship wasn't about the pearls. Maybe you could start gifting yourself one pearl every year on her birthday and start a new necklace in her honor. What an incredibly kind and thoughtful comment. Why didn't I think of this? 2 brilliant ideas. You're absolutely right too. We had a super special relationship because of who we are, not because of anything material. Thank you. I'm a sentimental old lady, but this made my eyes sting with tears. How lovely. Also, if you ever have a child, niece, grandchild, you could do the same thing. Gift them a pearl every year, then necklace, and make it a tradition. Back in elementary school, my class, including me, I won't play victim here, made fun of the nice teacher so much that he started crying. I've never felt so ashamed of myself until that moment. I still feel like shit up to this day. I've never seen him again after elementary school, so I never had the chance to say sorry. When I was in middle school, we had a computer science teacher that was extremely overweight and would do her makeup like Mimi from the Drew Carey show. She would come in every day with a 7-Up big gulp cup. This poor lady was literally tormented by our class. Kids would spam the printer with fat lad and pictures of big gulps and stuff. One day, someone found her wedding photo online. This was like 2003, and Mrs. painted a bunch of stuff on the picture and then made every single computer background this photo. She had a total breakdown and ran out of the classroom, and we never saw her again. I still think about that poor woman and how terrible we treated her. What's even worse was that no other principal, guidance counselor, or whoever talked to us about how fucked up the entire situation was, and no one ever got in trouble. If given the chance, I would absolutely apologize to her. My junior high English teacher, who was easily my favorite teacher at the time, started class one day with, "I'm going to tell you a very sad story, and I'm sorry if it makes you upset." Being the funny kid that I am, I waited for her to resume talking so that I could burst out in fake sobs and rake in the laughter and approval of my peers. My miscalculation was that the next words out of her mouth were, "My father died." The fake sob was already well underway before I even processed what she said. She stopped mid-sentence, looked at me with a horrified expression, and said something to the effect of, "My father was a great man. How dare you?" But honestly, I was too busy grappling with what I'd just done to really retain what she said. I was so ashamed that I couldn't bring myself to apologize, so I just kept my head down for the rest of the year and haven't seen her since. The part that bugs me the most is that she and I were close until that point. She'd gone out of her way to give me creative writing assignments and encourage me by having me read them for the rest of the class. It often felt like she was teaching me one instead of 30 other kids. My brain loves to replay this fun memory when I'm having trouble sleeping. I once told a brand new teacher, who I really liked in 6th grade, jokingly that I could get her fired. I forget what for. It was so dumb and I thought I was just being a goofball, but she got really upset that I would say that because she liked me too. I doubt I ever apologized, and I have to think she eventually realized I was just a dumb kid, but that still haunts me. I hope she is still teaching. Half my family are teachers, and I know how difficult it can be. When I was 17, I drove home from a friend's house one evening and parked in our attached garage. I had not been drinking, but being a scatterbrain, I forgot the keys in the ignition and the car was up. It ran all night, pumping carbon monoxide into the house where I lived alone with my mom. In the morning, my mom woke me up in a frenzy saying we had to get out of the house. She'd been looking forward to a breakfast with her friends, but had to have one of them drive us to the hospital instead. We had to get put on oxygen, my mum for much longer than I, because her bedroom was closer to the garage, so she inhaled more carbon monoxide. Nurses asked me if it was a suicide attempt, and when I insisted it wasn't, they didn't believe me. The look in their eyes as they saw me and thought I tried to murder, suicide my mom still haunts me. I was so ashamed and wished I could actually kill myself for being so stupid. It asked me if it was a suicide attempt, and when I insisted it wasn't, they didn't believe me. The look in their eyes as they saw me and thought I tried to murder, suicide my mum, still haunts me. One thing I'm terrified of is people accusing me of something bad when it is actually some simple misunderstanding or even some absent-mindedness on my part, and nobody believes me when I say I didn't do it or it was some innocent accident, especially if the police are involved. I once told a brand new teacher, who I really liked in 6th grade, jokingly, that I could get her fired. I forget what for. It was so dumb, and I thought I was just being a goofball, but she got really upset that I would say that because she liked me too. I doubt I ever apologized, and I have to think she eventually realized I was just a dumb kid, but that still haunts me. I hope she is still teaching. Half my family are teachers, and I know how difficult it can be. When I was 18, I started stealing money out of the register at the mall and pop store where I worked. I can't even tell you why I did it. I had never stolen even a candy bar before, but I started stealing large amounts of cash by falsifying refunds on the register. It went on for about a year, and then one day I was called into the office where 2 detectives were waiting. I had stolen over $17,000 in a year. That wasn't the shameful part. The shameful part was telling my dad that I was being charged with 7 felonies, but that if he paid the grocery store back, they would drop all charges. I don't know how he ever forgave me for this. He is the most honorable person I know, and the look of disgust on his face when I told him has stuck with me forever. And of course, he paid them back for me. I'm 31 now and have mostly paid him back, but it is still something that makes me really upset. I don't think I've ever forgiven myself for being so stupid. Despite his disappointment, he bailed you out. That's a good dad. What's your relationship with him like now? My dad is like this. I only know 3 people who would drop anything and do anything for the ones they love. My dad, my Sil, and my beefer. I feel so lucky to have people like that close to me. I only recently got treatment and diagnosis for bipolar, and the 3 of them kept me alive the last decade. I'm not exaggerating. My mom would have hung me out to dry, and I couldn't even be there for myself. It's caused a few recent breakdowns for me. BC, I never deserved their help and love, yet they're still here. I would be dead if they were. They did this all without knowing there was a reason. Bipolar, and that with treatment I could heal. Now that I have been healing, I can't thank them enough. I hope to be like them one day too. My dad had said a long time ago that he would rather do anything for those he loved with the potential of being thanked later than regret not being there. I'm glad I can express my gratitude now. I stole $10,000 from my parents' emergency safe over the course of a few years during the height of my addiction. When a family incident occurred and we were at the point where we'd likely have to use that emergency cash in the safe, I had to tell my mom that it was all gone and that I had spent it on drugs. It was the lowest, darkest moment of my life. My mom forgave me and used her own money to replace the cash I stole so that my dad wouldn't find out, as she knew he'd likely press charges. The worst part was that she used the bonds and the inheritance she received when her mother passed away to pay for it. Thankfully, we didn't need to use that money. Point being is, it's been 11 years, and I still feel so much shame. I know exactly what you mean. I'm so grateful for my mom. I don't deserve her love at all. Do you think you'll ever get to a point where you can pay her back? When I was growing up, I lived in a hoarder house, the yucky animal poop kind. I was a kid, I had no control over my environment, so I just had to keep a low profile to not draw attention of capes. We were on government assistance and all that. A few instances come to mind. In high school, I was a lunch ticket kid, meaning I was on a program where I got free school lunches. On Mondays before first period, I'd go to the cafeteria to collect my week's worth of lunch ticket. It was always the same lunch lady who passed them out. One day, totally randomly, she passes me my tickets and says something to the effect that I was a leech and mooch on the system, griping how she works for her food, and I should too. It was so weird and random, I just didn't think to fight her on it. She was a grown-up, so she must be right. Right? Second thing also happened in high school. I got called to the guidance office, and my guidance counselor handed me smoking cessation brochures and said if I wanted help quitting smoking, she could help. Thing is, I didn't smoke at all. It actually grossed me out, and it still does to this day. My mum smoked in the house, and I guess I stunk so bad of cigarettes that someone filed a complaint to the school about me. If it's any consolation, I'm now an honest middle-class taxpayer. Please no hate. Fuck that lunch lady. Shaming kids for their parents not being able to afford food. Messed up. What a bitch of a lady. We were never well off as a kid. But we had enough to do fun things, camping, occasional out-of-state vacation. But I remember a kid younger than me who likely needed to be on free lunch, but his druggy parents never filed. So he was ahead of me in line with basic lunch, and his account was negative, and the lunch lady started barking at him. Kid looked scared. I just used my PIN, and she told me I couldn't do that. I had enough gumption as a senior at that point to say, "What you going to do to stop me? Please call up the principal, and I'll explain the situation." She shut up and went about his way. I talked to a trusted teacher and explained my encounter, and I think she helped him get set up for the remainder of the year. Check LinkedIn just now for that kid. He's a civil engineer out west now. Good for that kid. Always happy to hear someone rising above shitty circumstances. Lunch ladies being mean to hungry kids are so fucked up. Once I didn't have money to pay for my lunch. I went through the line, got all my stuff, got to the end and say, "Oops, I have no money, can I? Bring it tomorrow." But since I already owed like $100 for the year, she took my lunch tray, threw it in the trash can, and gave me a fruit cup. That's all. My mom is a crook and a criminal sleazeball, but when she found out, they took food away from me as a hungry kid and threw it in the trash can in front of me. She lost her fucking shit on them. What was the point of taking it and throwing it away? For all that was worth, she may as well have let me eat it, considering I was a fucking child who had no income or control over my unpaid bills. I honestly believe lunches should be free in every part of the world. Yes, tax money would pay for it. No, I don't care. Hungry children cannot learn. Children who can learn do better in life, and then guess what? Grow up to pay taxes. Neither of these was your fault. Oh man, I just had a flashback to 5th grade. I had some fancy puppets and my music teacher wanted me to bring them in. I did, and he took one out of its box and immediately sniffed it deeply and asked me if my parents smoked. I was so humiliated, and it was such a weird ask that I just lied and said no. My classmates pretty much hated me, but even they were on my side against the weird teacher who was trying to make it a problem that my parents smoked. It was so strange. What a dick that teacher was to you. I used to be an AIG teacher at a school where 80% of the students fell below the poverty line, and one of my FE officers would bring her corduroy fur jacket to school when we had an event. Problem is, her fur jacket always reeked of cat piss. Like multiple tomcats' piss. We couldn't even keep it in the supply closet BC. The other stuff in there would then smell like cat piss. Poor kid. So, guess what I did? Told her I was dry cleaning all of the fur jackets and asked if she wanted hers clean too. Then offered to let her keep the jacket in the closet at school for her convenience if she would like. I also let her have an old garment back. It takes so little to show a little kindness to someone, especially to a kid that can't help their circumstances. I'm now an honest middle-class taxpayer. Don't feel bad. This happens to many of us despite our best efforts. I did a bunch of drugs and drank a lot when I was younger. I ended up in the hospital as a result. I remember having to explain to the doctor all the drugs I took, how often, how much I drank. I knew he'd probably heard it all before and was just trying to understand my condition. I sincerely doubt he was judging me too harshly. Or maybe he was, who knows. Regardless, I just remember feeling immense shame when I was explaining that I basically hadn't given a fuck about myself for the last 13-ish years. That was a lonely place. How are you doing now? Strikes and gutter balls, ups and downs. Not on drugs anymore though, so definitely better. A lot of ins and outs, a lot of what have you. 22 years ago, a friend trusted me and told she has epilepsy and the medication made her gain weight. I was only one outside family she shared with in 8 years. And as a silly teenager, I disclosed her secret to my, at the time, crush, who made it public info. I felt so small and ashamed of myself. Still ashamed of myself, though she forgave me for it, which made the guilt worse. I had something kinda similar happen. I had a really close friend who was my best friend all through elementary and middle school and even into some high school. I still really fondly remember our relationship and the connection we had, like borderline soul levels of connection. She and I had a sleepover when we were freshmen, and she ended up wetting the bed. When I'd woken up, she was just sitting there with strange body language, and then immediately talked about how she had to leave, and after she was gone, I realized what had happened. I didn't care about it. Things happen, but I could tell it really fucked up our relationship because of how humiliated she felt. I never brought it up because I had no idea how to talk about it, or if trying to talk about it, would just make her feel worse and make her relive it. I really tried hard to hold on to our relationship, but it was never really the same. We slowly drifted away. A few years later, me and some friends had snuck some beer. I was super drunk, and when someone asked what happened between us, I was a fucking dumbass. I told them what had happened, thinking it was safe to tell that secret and that they wouldn't say anything. It didn't become public info, but it got back to her that I'd told someone about it. I tried to apologize, but it was incredibly cruel of me to even talk about it, and it was just salt in the wound for her. I realized my dad had been standing in the doorway watching me dramatically shadow, boxed to top thumping on the radio in my bedroom when I was in 4th or 5th grade, getting knocked down, getting up again, the whole deal. My dad's a caring person, and there was no reason to be so embarrassed, but I remember feeling wicked, fucking stupid. I door-dashed myself 4 sets of Twinkies from the gas station down the street. So I have a twin sister who is autistic. Growing up, it was hard for me to understand why she was so different and was given extra attention. In 5th grade, 10 years old, I had a couple of friends I sat with at lunch. At our school, each class sat in one assigned row of tables. The special needs class sat at the end table of one of these rows, the row right next to mine. It how or why it started, but we would sit there and make fun of her, watching her, and make fun of her, watching her amongst ourselves if she did something weird. One thing we found weird was how she would lean against one of the teacher's aides and have him side hug her. We never went up to her directly. we would do it from our table like a bunch of cowards. This went on for a while until the three of us got called into an empty classroom by the vice principal. Apparently, we weren't so subtle cause. Somehow, my sister could tell that we were teasing her. And about her having the teacher's aide hug her, apparently she was doing this because she felt so bad from our bullying that she needed the comfort. The vice principal spent a good while scolding us before telling the two other girls to go, leaving only me. I'll never forget how she bent down, got in my face and said, "That's your sister. How could you do something like that to your own sister?" I just remember 10-year-old me staring down at the ground, in shame, unable to even say anything. It was honestly a big turning point for me. I not only swore to never treat my sister like that again, but I also made sure that nobody else teased or made fun of her. Went to the bank and the lady who was helping me told me about a savings account I could set up and the benefits of it. Didn't really care about it, but she seemed nice, so I thought, yeah, sure, why not? She wanted to show how easy it was to do so. She asked to use my phone and do it. And I said sure. I just held my phone flat on my palm facing towards her while she went on Safari, and then boom. Ebony wants it in all 3 holes with thumbnail big as fuck on the screen because I forgot to switch from private to normal. She created a new tab really fast and done what she intended to do, and we both acted like she didn't see what she saw, but I died inside and couldn't stop thinking about it for the following day. Oh God, that's horrifying. One time, me and my boyfriend at the time worked at a grocery store, and this old man came in once and walked up to my boyfriend and asked him to clear his porn history from his phone in case he died soon. He couldn't figure it out and didn't want anyone to find it. I wasn't standing there at the time, but he came to find me immediately to tell me about it. How embarrassing it must have been for him to ask a complete stranger just to spare his family. That or he just didn't give a about anyone else or see a worker as a human who deserves respect. Either way, humans are so complex. While I was going to school, I worked as a home health aide. My client asked me to show him how to delete the porn from his browsing history because his wife would leave him if she found out. Meanwhile, their son would visit and try to get me to do semi-nude photo shoots for him. He was married. He pissed me off one day, so I loudly told the wife what her boys were up to and walked out. They wouldn't give me time off for my wedding, so fuck them. I had the flu with a crazy fever and went to Target to pick up cold medicine and Gatorade and discovered that I was talking to myself when the lady in line in front of me turned around and looked at me horrified. I have no idea what I said, but she grabbed her as yet unloaded cart and skedaddled off to another register. There was a guy behind me in line and refused to tell me what I must have said, just laughed at me the whole time he was in line. This reminds me of the time I was sick as shit in Target with my mum as a kid. I was super congested and had a horrible cough. I started going into a coughing fit while we were in line for the pharmacy to pick up my meds. There were a lot of people in line. I coughed so bad and couldn't stop and eventually gagged up a big wad of phlegm that I uncontrollably spat on the floor in front of everyone. I forgot about this until I read this comment. Fuck, that was shameful. I felt so disgusting to have done that in front of everyone. That's a mystery that will nag at you forever. It's an ongoing shame. I put myself in serious debt over the past couple years. While I do pay everything on time, I can't get approved anywhere to help put my debt into a lump sum. I recently picked up a car payment as well for my mother, as my grandfather was paying it for her, but he recently passed. It's a struggle, so when I finally do pay everything off, I will most likely cry tears of joy. That's a mystery that will nag at you forever. After college, I got an apartment with a couple of friends. Shortly thereafter, another friend was looking for people to adopt kittens from a litter they had. With my roommate's blessings, I got a cat. His name was Puck, and he was awesome. About 6 months later, my roommate also ended up with an opportunity to adopt a kitten from a different litter, and he decided he would do so. And thus, Todorba entered our lives. He was precocious, energetic, and an avid explorer. Within a few days, my roommate found out from his new job that he would be required to travel across the country for 3 weeks for special job training. He was surprised and worried about what to do with his new kitten. I told him I'd just look after both cats until he got back, no worries. For the next couple of weeks, it was me, Puck, and Todabert. We had a good time, and the cats got along surprisingly well. One day, it was time for Puck's follow-up with the vet. That morning, I also noticed a doorbell curled up on the bathroom floor, unusually lethargic. I gave him some food, but he ate very little. I attempted to entice him to play, never difficult for a kitten, but he just meowed quietly and stayed in the bathroom. I got things together to take Puck to the vet and went back to check on Toto. He was now curled up in the bathroom sink basin. Something was clearly wrong. I called my roommate and told him I was taking both cats to the vet. He agreed. Upon arrival, the vet set Puck aside to see what was ailing poor little Toto. What was a mystery to me was obvious to her. Renal failure is sadly common among kittens and can be purely congenital. She told me that his only hope was emergency dialysis at the nearby university. I called my roommate to give him the bad news. After a short discussion where we were both stunned, it was clear he couldn't afford the treatment. I got off the phone and interrupted the vet, who was already rushing to prep Todderbart for transport to the university. It wasn't going to happen. I was in a daze, somehow totally unprepared for such serious circumstances. The vet was understanding and informed me of what I already knew. The next most humane option was euthanization. I agreed, knowing my roommate was aware of the situation. Then she asked the obvious question that I was equally unprepared for. Would I like to stay with Todderbart while they put him down? As I said, I was in a daze. When I heard the question, the only part I could process was, would I like to? No, I would not like to. I told her no thank you. She apologized for the circumstances, and I collected Puck with a clean bill of health and drove him home. I have no memory of the trip. I only remember getting inside the apartment, letting Puck out of his carrier, sitting on the couch and crying. Moments later, her question entered my brain, and I heard it properly for the first time. Would I like to stay with Todderbart while they put him down? Holy shit. Of course I would. He deserves, at the very least, that small comfort from me. I called the vet to ask if I could come back, and she sadly informed me that they'd already performed the procedure. I thanked her and hung up. I spent about 3 weeks in total with that kitten. That was about 20 years ago. I still tear up every time I think about how I wasn't with him at the end. When Puck's time came years later, I was there for every bittersweet moment. Sorry, Todderbart, you deserved more. My time to shine. Last year, I was hospitalized for about 3 weeks. I was in the ICU for about a week at the start. When I initially woke up, I realized I had a catheter in me, and every time I woke up after sleep, a slight morning would happen, and it was pretty uncomfortable, but it would go away quickly. For a while at the hospital, I was suppressing a lot of intrusive thoughts, because the feeling of a boner with a catheter was very displeasing. I had one of the nicest, most caring nurses, and it didn't help that she was roughly my age, early 20s. Out of respect that she was caring for me, helping me poop, get my phone, could not move my arms whatsoever, I refused to have any thoughts about her because I respected her and thought of her as a friend, because she would talk to me when I was lonely and depressed. Fast forward, I had the catheter finally removed. It has been like 2 weeks and a half, and my dick felt like it was going to explode. Every morning felt like I was on the verge of a wet dream. I had just started to learn how to walk again and had some function of my arm. I had the biggest boner ever, so I decided I'll walk to the bathroom and have a wank and finally get this over with. I go in there, barely able to stand. I start and I realize that something's wrong. For some reason, it's difficult keeping my dick hard, so I keep at it until I start getting dizzy. I realized I was about to faint because my body needed the blood that was going to my dick to regulate the blood pressure for me to stand, because I was still early in my physio. As I'm about to faint, I managed to hit the emergency call button for the bathroom and cover myself back in my hospital gown. Some random nurse found me passed out on the ground. Next thing I remember was waking up in a chair with like 5 nurses making sure I was okay. Told them I wanted to poop, and since I knew how to walk again, I tried giving it a shot on my own. God, I have been wanting to tell this story to someone for so long. I was so ashamed, but it's also funny. Also, now have a thing for nurses. Everything I had planned 7 years ago, everything I could ever hope to achieve by now, not a single one of it happened. I'm so disappointed and ashamed of myself for being incapable. I feel like I just wasted my prime doing nothing but overthink. The anxiety, embarrassment, disappointment and pressure are weighing on me too much. I can't bring any confidence in me anymore. Blaming COVID was just an excuse, a means of escape. I'll probably end up in the exact same shit run even if it didn't happen. I know I'm just a guy on the internet, but I want to tell you that it's okay. Yes, you might have made mistakes. Yes, you might not have gotten your goals finished. However, the best time to start doing those goals is today. And I know that it's easier said than done. When I was 20, I thought I'd wasted 2 years and I was too late to follow my dreams. When I was 25, I thought, why didn't I do this thing like so-and-so? Why didn't I just start when I was 20? Same thing happened at 30. My birthday came and I thought about all the time I wasted between 25 and 30. Finally, at 35, I realized I was going to repeat the same thing when I was 40. I was going to get to 40 and think, why didn't I do something at 35? So I bit the bullet, talked to a career counselor about what I wanted to do with my life, and they helped me plan. They also helped me with some of my mental issues and getting me to find someone I was able to work with. What I'm saying is this: what you are feeling isn't unique, and that's a good thing. There are so many people who feel the exact same way, and they all feel alone with that feeling. You have the choice to continue these last 7 years, or to accept them and move forward. The past is history. The future is a mystery. Just walk the present. I, male, once failed to control a mediocre fart mid-conversation with a female co-worker friend when she was talking. I heard her small stumble mid-sentence. She recovered well. I blushed like a baby and had troubles talking forward, but she recovered our conversation. She did it flawlessly. Chad conversation piloting skills, 10 out of 10. But now when I see her, I sometimes mentally fess upon myself. A mediocre fart. I love the implication that had it been a higher quality fart, you would have shamelessly blasted it mid-conversation without the faintest hint of regret. Bubble guts during a road trip. Had to pull over and poop in the bushes. People were driving by and saw me. I will never recover from that embarrassment. Edit. Sounds like a lot of you share the same experience I did. I got the bubble guts while on a loaded tour bus in the Jordanian desert. I had to ask them to stop ASAP, and ASAP happened to be at a police station in the middle of nowhere. This being the rural Middle East, they did not have the toilets that I am accustomed to in the US. They had squatty potties with a wall faucet and a garden watering bucket instead of toilet paper. In my pooper stupor, I had to run back out of the police station, where I saw my tour guide running toward me with a pack of tissue. He had apparently anticipated my need. The entire bus had to wait for me while I defiled the inside of that police station bathroom in such a way that I'm surprised I wasn't arrested. Talk about a walk of shame back to the bus. Look, it's not mine, but this immediately reminded me of a story to commiserate with yours. My mom and auntie went on a road trip a few years back. Both of them have some urinary incontinence /urgent potty issue. Like, gotta go now, no options. So they're driving around dusk and auntie says to pull over because she has to pee now. My mom does so. It's a fairly slow road and auntie drops through behind the vehicle's door because she couldn't waddle to the tree line without peeing. As she starts to go, a cop pulls up and gets out to see if they're okay. Auntie panics, tries to pull her pants up and falls. But since she's on an incline, she starts to tumble and pee. She's rolling down this little slope, spraying pee like a sprinkler and shrieking, tangled up in her pants. Poor cop went so red, apologized, and scurried back in his car. My mum laughed so hard she peed. Auntie will never live it down, but laughs about it. I had been eating sometimes as many as 10 or 15 10 McGickadin a day for a few years when the guy I got them from couldn't get any more. I tried as hard as I could to just ride it out for a few weeks, but the withdrawals were so bad, I can't even put it in words to properly describe just how terrible I felt. I laid in bed, kicking my legs uncontrollably, non-stop, with little to no sleep or food for about 3 days and nights, before I finally caved and went to the emergency room. The nurse walked in as I lay there, kicking, sweating, and tossing and turning uncontrollably. She asked me what brought me in, and I broke down sobbing, then explained that I was in severe opioid withdrawal. I was expecting her to judge me harshly or be cruel about it, but when her eyes teared up and she assured me that she was going to make me feel better, I cried even harder. I was so embarrassed and ashamed for everything. For what I had done to my brother and sister-in-law, for how I had ignored my wife's pleas for me to stop, and for how I had let myself get into the situation in the first place. They gave me a few tabs of Suboxone and a follow-up appointment to get into a president program. I am a very lucky man for many reasons, but the biggest one is that my wife stayed by my side through all of that. This all happened before we were married, so she could have walked away any time, but she didn't. We've now been married for over 5 years, together for 14. She's a stay-at-home. Mom and I have a really good job in the trades. I have been clean ever since getting off of Suboxone 2 years ago. I mean, nobody wants to admit they ate 9 cans of ravioli, but I did. I'm ashamed of myself. The first can doesn't count. Then you get to the second and third, fourth and fifth. I think I burnt with a blowtorch, and then I just kept eating. Shit storms are coming. My friend, admitting your mistake is the first step towards healing. In this case, healing both your mind and your gastrointestinal system. I've made my plenty of those mistakes. I will share here with you the most recent. I am ashamed to admit that 2 weeks ago, I ate an entire 8-count package of hot dogs in one sitting, microwaved with no bun and no condiment. I don't know why. I was hungry, and my stomach said it would be the more delicious than the most sweetest nectar from the garden of the gods. I was a fool to believe the lies of the snake within my gut, a prime example of the folly of man. I paid for my crimes dearly. The sound of shattering porcelain still echoes through my mind, and the monumental earthquake still ripples through my stomach. I have paid. I have repented. But only now can I begin to heal. Edit. It has been brought to my attention that I have been deceived. The user I replied to did not, in fact, consume the contents of 9 cans of ravioli. This was a farce. I opened my arms, my heart, and my stomach to this user, and I was betrayed. The story I was told was stolen from the popular television program Trailer Park Boys, which I have never seen in my life. This is not an admission of guilt. I will not be speaking to any law enforcement officers without my attorney present. As of writing, I have not been read my Miranda rights. As a result of this sudden and heart-wrenching betrayal, it is with deep sorrow that I must formally evicting said user from my PST's therapy group, Post-Culinary Stress Disorder, Raw, Cool, Patent Penting. I hope that we as a group can move on and heal from this heinous act. About 20 years ago, I attended a party at a co-worker's house that consisted of friends and co-workers alike. I was newly promoted to supervisor of one of the teams at our company, and a lot of the co-workers at the party were my subordinate. Throughout the evening, my co-workers kept toasting me and giving me shots of tequila. As the evening progressed, my level of intoxication went from wow, this is fun, to paint the bathroom with vomit in pretty quick order. Also, throughout the evening, the people who were my friends at the party decided they were leaving and decided I was too drunk to come with them, and before I knew it, the party was winding down and I was one of few people left. Here's where things get foggy for me. I had never been this drunk before, not even close. I remember that I was upset that I got abandoned in my current state by my friends. I remember that I was embarrassed because I vomited in their bathroom more than once. And I remember that I didn't want to drive, but no one would take me home. Here's the part I'm ashamed of. I decided to drive home. Shame doesn't begin to describe how I feel about this decision. I was blackout drunk. I was still vomiting almost uncontrollably. I was at a party in town I was not familiar with, and I had a car with a manual transmission that I was very new to driving. I learned how to drive stick with this car and only had it for about 4 months by this time. I got into my car, barely able to drive it under normal circumstances, and had to figure out how to get home, over 30 minutes away. Things remain foggy. I remember leaving the party. I remember pulling over in the median of a 4-lane divided road and vomiting, and someone pulling over behind me and asking if I was oak, and that's it. I don't remember anything else at all. The next memory I have is waking up the next day in my apartment, in my bed, fully clothed and hungover worse than I ever have been before, with no clue as to how I got there. My roommates, the friends who left me at the party the night before, weren't there, and as far as I could tell, they never came home that night. As I got up and checked around, my car was in the parking lot out front, fully intact and vomit-free. I was uninjured, aside from the worst hangover I've ever had, but I was filled with the most shame I have ever had or will have in my entire life. I never should have gotten behind the wheel of my car. I am lucky that I got home safely, even though I'm not sure how I got there. I could have hurt myself or someone else. That evening left me shame that I will never let myself forget, and that I never will allow myself to feel again. A shame that I used to keep myself sober for the last 20 years. I know that many things happened along the way where others should have stopped me or helped me. Something else I will never forget about the people involved, but I have come to accept responsibility alone for my actions. I still got into the car and left the party even though I shouldn't have. I didn't ask for help when it was clear that I should have. Toldred got blackout drunk at a party and tried to drive myself home. Luckily didn't kill anybody. Somehow made it home even though I have no idea how. Probably had a strange good Samaritan drive me and my car to my apartment and leave me there. Was on opiate to heroin in late teens to mid-20s. Life is better now, 12 years without that shit this August. This happened in like 2nd grade and it still haunts me. I can't remember the exact conversation, but I boastfully informed my friend that I had basically been at a concert because my mom was at one while pregnant with me. Later found out this isn't even true. It was actually while pregnant with my brother. Anyway, my friend was like, "Oh yay, what concert?" I panicked because I had absolutely no idea and blurted out the first name that came to mind, James Bond. She gave me a weird look and changed the topic. I later found out who or what James Bond even is. I have no idea why I thought he was a musician and proceeded to wish my mother had never been pregnant with me at all. Has this friend completely forgotten about this exchange years ago? No doubt. Do I still occasionally think about it while lying awake at night? Yes. Asked my friends if Michael Jackson was on American Idol once, and they never let it go. I was 19, living on my own and making $8.50. Life was hard. I stole some old computer memory from the place I was working and sold it. Made about $300, 100 scuffed warehouse full of computer stuff. They have probably written it off and it would have ended up trapped. I rationalized the hell out of it. That was a lot of years ago, but I still feel like complete shit about it. I've only ever told one other person what I did. I spent a year and a half working as a freight broker, and I was constantly horrifically ashamed of myself due to the nature of the job. If you don't know, freight brokers act as a middleman between shippers and truckers. So you tell me you need a load sent from Albany to Albuquerque. I tell you I can do it for $4,500, and I pay a trucker to do it for $4,000. Truckers hated us, but most of that was unjustified. We offered a legitimate service, as shippers won't just give the load to every Vlad or Igor in their truck. What made the job so awful for me is I'm a people pleaser to the extreme. I cannot let people down or fail people because it literally eats at my soul. 50% of the job was lying to a shipper I've just let down because of things that were completely out of my control. I hated it. I went in every day hoping a truck would crush my car. I'm in a far better place now. Trigger warning. Sexual abuse when I was being groomed by my grandfather. It took me years to be able to look myself in the mirror again. It started with me trying to sell nudes online to make enough money to move out of his house. His wife was incredibly emotionally, verbally and mentally abusive, and my grandpa was the only one who was nice to me, so I trusted him with a lot. He was also super open about sexuality and supportive of sex work, and I made the mistake of trusting him when I had someone ask to mail me something. All of our mail came through his shop. He worked on radios, so I had to tell him if I was expecting a package. When he found out that I was selling nudes out of desperation to move out instead of offering any kind of help, he blackmailed me. He told me he would tell my grandmother if I didn't send him copies of my photos. This escalated to the point of making me model lingerie for him that he would buy me and making me sleep in his bed after his son died because he was sad and scared to be alone. One time I woke up to his hands inside my shirt, groping my breasts, and I just wiggled away from him and tried to go back to sleep. The next morning he told me all about the super realistic dream. He had about groping me. I still struggle with feelings of guilt and shame and have days where I can't even bear to look in the mirror. Edit. Added a trigger warning. Some backstory. My mom and my bio dad are divorced. My mom worked heavy shift work at a car factory, so I was never at home as a child. I'd live with multiple other family couples, and then my mom would come see me for my 30-minute lunchtime at school. On the weekends, I was at my dad's house. I was abused by some of the families, but that's not what this is about right now. So when my half-brother was born, I was 11. My mom and my stepdad, who both worked the same rotating shifts at the factory, decided it would be best that after my mom's 1-year maternity leave was up, they would work on opposite shifts, so my half-brother would always have a parent at home and he wouldn't have to be raised like I was. I hated him for that, and I was extremely jealous of the fact that not only did he have both biological parents, he was also able to stay home, and the only time he was passed off to someone else was when he went to evening after school daycare for an hour or so, because I was too young to look after him. My mom or my stepdad would pick him up on their way home from work. I hate that I hated a baby toddler for having a better life than me, when it's not his fault I was raised the way I was, or treated the way I was. Me and my brother, 12 years old now, are super close now, even though I'm in my mid-20s. I'll never tell him what I thought of him when I was little. When I was 10 or 11, I shot dead a completely innocent bird with a soft air gun, and that is something I thought I and my then friend would never speak of again, which I haven't till now. This shame will never pass. And I deserve that